Maher thought he could toss a sly little jab, let it land, and move right along. But Denzel Washington wasn't here to play along. His reply didn't explode, it unfolded slow and lethal, like a blade in a quiet room. By the end, the studio was silent, the audience riveted, and online, the moment had already gone nuclear. Backstage at CBS Television City, the green room felt sterile. Too clean. Too rehearsed. The kind of space designed to look welcoming but not feel it. There was a chill in the air, not from the AC, something more subtle. Like the room didn't want to be touched. Denzel sat alone, still and composed. His phone rested in his hand, screen gone black. He wasn't scrolling. He wasn't texting. He was listening to something quieter. Intuition, maybe? An assistant peeked in, all bright energy and thin smiles. "You're up in 10, Mr. Washington." He nodded, slow. No nerves. This wasn't his first rodeo. But this one? This one buzzed with a different charge. 2 days earlier, his communications director had warned him. Carefully. "They're calling it a talk about civility and polarization. But if Maher takes the gloves off, it might not stay that polite. Just saying, stay sharp." Denzel didn't respond. He didn't need to. He already knew what was coming. These panels always started with faux politeness and ended with passive-aggressive potshots. What tipped him off wasn't the topic, it was the silence. No one greeted him when he walked in. No small talk. Just side eyes and muffled laughter that evaporated when he entered the green room. Yeah. He'd seen this setup before. 2 minutes, recalled from the door. He rose slowly. Adjusted his charcoal blazer, tailored, understated, lethal in its simplicity. Nothing flashy. Just precision. In the mirror, his reflection stared back, calm, composed, locked in. As he walked to the stage, he passed a line of old black and white photos. Men in suits. Men with power. Men who never had to worry that speaking too directly might get them branded angry. Then lights. Applause sign. Theme music. Showtime. Maher greeted him with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Our guest tonight needs no introduction. Actor, activist, icon, Denzel Washington. A man of principle, assuming emotion doesn't get the better of him." The audience chuckled. A few too loudly. Denzel didn't flinch. He gave Maher a small nod. Sat back. Crossed one leg. Hands folded. Still as stone. "Thanks for having me," he said, voice like calm water. Maher leaned in. "Let's kick it off easy. Why is everyone so obsessed with being morally right these days? Why does every issue need a moral lecture?" Denzel took a moment. Blinked once. Nodded just a little. He'd been expecting that opening swing. Then he leaned in, ever so slightly. "Moral lecture?" he repeated, voice light. "I'd call it speaking up for the folks nobody wants to hear from." Maher laughed softly. Sure. But isn't all this shouting getting in the way of progress? Everyone's trying to go viral instead of solve real problems. It's noise." A few uncomfortable chuckles from the audience. One person coughed. Denzel didn't smile. "You know what I've noticed?" he said, voice steady. "When young people, especially black voices, raise the volume, they're called emotional. Or worse. But let someone else lose it on air, and suddenly that's passion. Authenticity." He let it hang in the air. Maher squirmed in his seat, a flicker of discomfort flashing across his face. "But isn't that what I'm saying?" Maher pressed. "You're making it about race. I'm talking about approach. People are tired of being preached at. They want action, not attitude." Denzel tilted his head. "You can't separate the two," he said quietly. "If your life's been shaped by being ignored, dismissed, stepped over, you're not gonna sound like a TED Talk when you finally speak. And why should you?" The room got quiet. The kind of quiet that leans forward. Maher tried to reset. "Okay, but don't you think activism's become theater? The mic gets used like a weapon. Every conversation turns into a showdown. That's not helping anyone." Denzel gave a slow, knowing laugh. Not amused, bemused. You think this just became a stage? He said, eyes locked in. It's always been theater, Bill. You just didn't notice when the same cast kept writing every line. Now that new voices are on the mic, you call it a show. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone let out a sharp, a smattering of applause, then stillness again. Maher grabbed his water, fingers twitching slightly. Okay, he said. Let's set feelings aside. What's actually being done? Denzel leaned back, still laser-focused. That depends, he said. Are we talking about what's trying to get done, or what's being buried in red tape and filibustered into silence? Maher raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Denzel didn't miss a beat. Take voting rights, he said. I helped push forward a bill, more polling stations, better mail-in options, protections for folks with disabilities. Practical stuff. No drama. But every time we bring it up, we get hit with the same line, overreach. He paused. Let it land. So I'll ask you, who's really keeping progress from happening? Maher gave a half shrug. Maybe it's just not that black and white. Denzel smiled faintly. Cool. Unbothered. Exactly. No, Denzel said, quiet but firm. His tone didn't shift. His eyes didn't flinch. It is that simple. What gets complicated is trying to defend systems built for a few while pretending they were made for everyone. A stir moved through the audience, not laughter, not even discomfort. Just a quiet realization that the room had changed. This wasn't a late-night sparring match. This was something more serious. And only one of them looked like he belonged in the deep end. Maher crossed his legs, his mouth twitching into a tight-lipped smile. Nice line, he said. Real polished. Denzel's gaze didn't waver. Maybe. Or maybe it just sounds clear because I don't need volume to make it matter. But Maher wasn't done. Not even close. He leaned back, fingers tapping the edge of his chair like he was waiting for a cue only he could hear. Then came the line, not a question, not a prompt. A shot, dressed in civility. You talk a lot about struggle. About injustice. But isn't part of real leadership learning to take criticism, without calling it oppression every time? The words dropped like bait. Calm on the outside, but coiled with something uglier underneath. The kind of phrase meant to make you hesitate before answering. The kind meant to shut a door and call it a discussion. Denzel sat perfectly still. He looked at Maher, not like he was offended, but like he saw the game. Like he'd seen it too many times before. Then he turned slightly toward the audience. Just enough to acknowledge them. No grand gestures. No raised voice. But when he spoke, his tone shifted. Slower. Clearer. Sharper. Let me ask you this, he said. If I break down how certain systems are built to exclude, and your first response is to say I'm playing the victim, what does that say about your listening? The silence was immediate. No rustling. No polite coughs. Just stillness. He went on, steady and precise. I'm not claiming oppression every time someone disagrees with me. I'm pointing out a pattern. And the second I do, the conversation moves, not toward the truth of what I said, but toward whether I'm being too emotional. He paused, then delivered the final line with a clean edge. That's not conversation. That's avoidance. Cut to Maher. For the first time all night, his expression slipped. Just for a second. But enough. Denzel didn't look away. And let's not pretend this is new, he continued. You've built your brand on saying the hard things. You like being the one who pushes back. Challenges the narrative. Then he leaned in, not physically, but through sheer force of presence. But when a black man does it, when I challenge you, it's not bold anymore. It's too personal. Too dramatic. Suddenly, I'm not a thinker. I'm a problem. A woman in the third row clapped. Then someone else. It spread, slow, uneven, but real. Maher raised a hand, tried to laugh it off. Okay. Let's not get heated. Let's keep it civil. Denzel turned back to him, eyes steady, voice like ice over fire. I am being civil, he said. I'm just not shrinking to fit your comfort. That line hit like a quiet detonation. Not loud. Not flashy. But final. It echoed. Not just in the studio, but online, seconds later. Maher inhaled, just enough to show he felt the hit. He tried to reset, reaching for his notes, but the movement was off. A little too fast. A little too unsure. And the audience could feel it. Not because they were all Team Denzel, but because, for once, nobody was smoothing over the tension. No punchline to clean the wound. Just the raw weight of the moment. And Denzel? He didn't twist the knife. He didn't need to. He leaned back, smoothed a fold in his jacket, and waited. But the real impact didn't land until after the cameras cut. Back in the dressing room, barely 10 minutes after the show wrapped, Ree rushed in like she'd run the length of the building. You're blowing up, she said, waving his phone. Denzel raised an eyebrow as he removed his mic. Already? Number 2 on X, she said. Climbing. Fast. He took the phone. Notifications blurred into each other. Dozens, no, hundreds, of clips circulating already. Most of them replaying one line on loop. I'm not shrinking to fit your comfort. Some had dramatic music added. Others had white captions in bold, this. Every word. Watch it again. He exhaled through his nose, long and measured. They're gonna spin it. They're already spinning it, Ree said. But you should see the comments. People felt that. And it caught fire. Not just on the political threads. This wasn't just activist circles. It was everywhere. Podcasts, fan edits, NBA Twitter, celebrity reactions, teachers reposting it to their classes. It jumped platforms like it was built to go viral. No one from the production team came in to shake hands. No goodbyes. No thank yous. Just a PA poking in with a quick, "You're wrapped," and vanishing. Denzel didn't mind. He wasn't sticking around for applause. In the car, his phone kept lighting up, texts from old friends, fellow actors, civil rights leaders, even athletes. Some long. Some short. Most were just one word, damn. One message stood out, his mother. You stayed true. That man thought he could put you in a box. He forgot who raised you. But as the praise poured in, so did something else. Not backlash, not yet. But a pulse. A flicker of tension rising online. Not everyone liked what he'd said. And Denzel knew the pattern. He hadn't ended anything. He just lit the fuse. By the time they reached the elevator, the headlines were already hitting screens like sparks from a live wire. Denzel Washington and Bill Maher face off in heated honor showdown. Denzel glanced down at Ree's phone, the screen glowing between them. He read it once, then handed it back. Clashes, he said under his breath, almost to himself. Funny. Every time a black man sets a boundary, they call it a brawl. Ree didn't answer. She didn't need to. He pressed the elevator button and stared at the floor, his expression unreadable. Upstairs, the hotel room welcomed him with a kind of heavy quiet, the kind that settles in behind the noise. Not uncomfortable. Just familiar. He kicked off his shoes. The carpet muted the sound. Turned on the TV, no volume. And there it was. His face. Frozen mid-sentence, lips moving silently while a panel of commentators squabbled in boxes across the screen. One pundit sighed. This is why progressives lose elections. They come off as preachy. Another cut in. He didn't even raise his voice. He was precise, surgical. Denzel didn't stick around to hear the rest. He hit mute again. Sat down. Rubbed the back of his neck. Then, just as his finger hovered over the remote, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. DC area code. He let it ring twice before answering. Washington. A steady male voice answered. Polished, practiced. The kind that never cracks. Mr. Washington, Ed Ramos here with CNN. We'd love to have you on for a follow-up. Tomorrow morning if you're available. There was a pause on Denzel's end. Then, I'll have my team get back to you. He hung up. Ree was already watching him. You want me to decline? Denzel leaned back in the chair, eyes drifting toward the dark window, the city below lit like an open circuit board. Tell them we're thinking about it. Because that was the truth. He wasn't scared of the moment. But he wasn't about to be devoured by it either. Not again. He didn't need another studio table, another clever host waiting to twist his words into a trending hashtag. He wasn't dodging the fight. He was choosing not to be reduced by it. And outside the bubble of network spin and comment section chaos, something else was happening. The clip, the one where he said, "I'm just not being small," was catching fire. But not just because of how it sounded. It meant something. Across timelines and group chats and living rooms, people shared it not as a moment of defiance, but recognition. Teachers posted about meetings where they were told to watch their tone. Nurses, parents, retail workers, all saying the same thing, "I've felt this." A mother in Detroit posted a video of her teenage son writing Denzel's quote on a sticky note and sticking it to his bedroom mirror, "I'm not being small." That stayed with him. But so did the backlash. By sunrise it was roaring. The headlines multiplied like sparks on dry brush. Denzel's clapback heard round the internet. Did Washington go too far? Actor or activist, where's the line? TV panels picked it up. Podcasts were already cutting emergency takes. One conservative host sneered. He's just an activist in designer clothes. Like that was supposed to discredit him. Back home in Mount Vernon, the sun barely up, the smell of old coffee curling through the kitchen, Denzel sat at the table while the TV droned in the background. He hadn't slept much. Not from nerves. From clarity. He knew this rhythm. The build-up. The blowback. Across from him, Ree scrolled through her laptop, brow furrowed. "We've got over 20 media requests," she said. "MSNBC, NPR, independent shows, even that guy from The Viewpoint wants you." Denzel didn't look up. "Pass on him." "Already did." The morning light filtered through the blinds, soft and slow. "Are they asking to talk policy?" he asked. Ree hesitated. "Mostly? They want a reaction. The quote. The moment." "Of course they did." He sighed. Not annoyed, just resigned. He understood media strategy better than most. That was the problem. One clear, controlled sentence, spoken after a minefield of interruptions and side-eyed innuendo, was now a meme. A punchline or a rallying cry, depending on who was watching. That afternoon, a call came in from Capitol Hill. A senior staffer, trying to sound cordial. "Mr. Washington, we respect your voice, but just a heads up, the press doesn't always reward candor. Best to stay strategic." Translation: You made the wrong people uncomfortable. Tread lighter next time. He expected it. What stung was the message from someone closer. A congressman, older, moderate, once a mentor, tweeted about the importance of unity and tone. Never naming names, but everyone knew who he meant. A few centrist commentators called for restraint on all sides. As if calmly calling out a double standard was the same as smirking through someone else's truth on live television. Denzel didn't bite. No tweets. No Instagram live. He went silent. Deliberately. Instead, he picked up the phone. Reached out to grassroots leaders. Checked in on people doing the quiet, exhausting work far from any studio lights. He Zoomed with young actors from community arts programs, some in neighborhoods nobody ever puts on camera. One boy, maybe 17, leaned into the mic and said, "I felt seen." That landed harder than any headline. Because nobody wrote about the effort it takes not to snap. To hold composure in a room trying to provoke you. To respond, not react. People called it a mic drop. But it wasn't that. It was discipline. It was dignity. That night, alone at his desk, Denzel sat in the blue glow of his laptop. Emails. Press statements. Offers to respond. He didn't. Not yet. because the world was still spinning the moment. But he was playing for something bigger than the spin. He reached for the black leather journal, scuffed at the corners, softened from years of being opened when words felt too heavy to speak aloud. He flipped it open to a blank page and wrote. Not loud. Just unmistakable. Then he closed the book. He hadn't walked into that studio for applause. He wasn't chasing headlines. But he also wasn't about to vanish into silence because someone else was uncomfortable with his clarity. Drawing that line, choosing to speak without shrinking, wasn't a one-night gesture. It was a decision that would echo far beyond the trending topics. A week passed. The online storm moved on, as it always does. A celebrity scandal stole the spotlight. A politician's mic slip trended. The next outrage clicked into place. Denzel's moment didn't vanish, it just shifted. The clip still surfaced now and then, passed quietly between group chats and private timelines. Usually with a simple caption, "This is how you hold your ground." The noise faded. He didn't mind. He never needed the noise. What stayed with him were the conversations that emerged when the dust settled. The kind that didn't go viral, but went deep. Like the woman from his neighborhood, maybe mid-50s, who stopped him outside a local food pantry. Her voice low, her eyes sincere. "I've been in rooms where no one listened unless I stayed small," she said. "You said what I couldn't say for years." Then, after a pause barely louder than a whisper, "I just wish I hadn't waited so long to speak up." Or the voicemail from a retired pastor in a nearby town. Gravel in his voice, honesty in his tone. "Didn't agree with all of it," he said. "But I respected your poise. That's how grown folks talk. Keep doing what you're doing." Those moments mattered more than any trending graph ever could. Because they weren't about a quote, they were about the weight of it. What happened on that stage wasn't some viral clapback. It was about setting a tone. Drawing a new line. There's a certain pressure that comes with his place in the world, not just as a public figure, but as a black man who walks into rooms built to question him before he even opens his mouth. And twice as hard once he does. People love to say, stick to the facts. But when your very presence is treated like a provocation, objectivity becomes a game you were never meant to win. He thought about that when he spoke to a room full of interns. College kids from across the country, ambitious, bright-eyed, notebooks in hand. Eager to be heard. Eager to figure out how. One young man raised his hand. "How do you know when to speak up, and when it's smarter to stay quiet?" Denzel folded his arms, thinking for a second. "You don't wait for it to feel easy," he said. "You speak when staying quiet feels like betrayal." They all scribbled that down. Another voice, a woman in the back, nervous but determined, asked, "How do you keep from losing your temper when people talk down to you?" Denzel gave a quiet smile. "Oh, I get angry," he said. "But real anger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just holds steady." That wasn't something he learned from a textbook. That was from lived experience, years of being interrupted mid-thought, judged by tone before content, told to moderate himself while others got to be blunt. After the session, a young woman waited until everyone else had gone. She hesitated, then said softly, "I want to run for office. But I'm told I talk too much. That I care too deeply. I've been told I need to toughen up." Denzel looked her in the eye. "Don't harden," he said. "Stay open. That's your strength. That's what they fear." She nodded, almost surprised, then wrote something down as she walked away. Later, he stood by the tall windows, watching the slow movement of traffic below. Horns. Headlights. Headlines. The world outside buzzed with noise. But inside here, it was still. And sharp. He knew the clip had traveled. He'd seen the shares. The reposts. The edits. But what mattered most was how it landed. Because that phrase, "I'm not being small," was never meant to be a zinger. It was a reminder. A quiet revolution. For every person who's ever swallowed their truth to keep the peace. For every voice softened just to be heard without judgment. For every face that smiled through dismissal because they knew what happened if they didn't. This story wasn't living in the headlines anymore. It was living in classrooms. Living in whispered conversations between coworkers in break rooms. Living in quiet courage. A teacher from Kansas wrote in. I played your clip for my 8th graders, not because of politics, but to teach what grace under pressure looks like. A veteran from Georgia emailed too. I didn't agree with your politics. But the way you stayed calm when that man tried to rattle you. I respect that. That takes more strength than shouting ever could. That was the legacy. Not that Denzel won the moment, but that he showed people something they hadn't seen modeled often. A way to be unwavering without being unkind. To hold the line without swinging the sword. To speak truth with your full chest, but never out of spite. In a world obsessed with instant reactions and performative rage, that kind of calm courage? That's rare. That's power. And that's the deeper takeaway. You don't have to be loud to matter. You don't have to disappear to be accepted. You don't have to shrink so someone else feels taller. When Denzel sat across from Maher, he wasn't angling to make a splash. He came to say something real. What he left with was a ripple that became something bigger. A blueprint. For every girl who's been told she's too intense. For every boy told to toughen up when he speaks with feeling. For every adult who's spent years thinking their tone was the problem, instead of the discomfort it revealed. So if you're reading this and wondering, where do I fit into this story? Ask yourself. Where have you made yourself smaller just to survive a moment? Where have you stayed silent, not because you agreed, but because you weren't sure your voice would be welcome? And what would happen if next time, you didn't hold back? What if the next time someone questioned your delivery, you looked them in the eye and simply said, I'm not being small? Because that changes things. That shifts the room. And once you do that, they'll feel it. Some will embrace it. Some will push back. But none of them will forget it. And neither will you. So if this meant something to you, pass it on. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Say the words aloud if they sit heavy in your chest. And subscribe, because here, we don't chase clicks. We tell stories that speak to your bones. Stories that remind you. Your voice is enough. Your presence matters. Just as it is.